What does 16 say? What? Equals cosine. Okay. First thing I would do, again, when you see tangent, secants, and cosines and sines, just switch everything to sines and cosines. Okay? So I'd probably start with the left side, switch all to sines and cosines. So this is going to be, did you try that? Good. Good first step. Plus 1 over cosine. Now, we're not where we want to be, right? But we already have a common denominator, which would have been my second step if I didn't have a common denominator, because the left side is 2 things being added, and the right side is 1 fraction. Okay? So I would get a common denominator, but we already got the common denominator, so let's write that out. It's sine x plus 1 over cosine x. Okay? And again, we're trying to get, let me pull this thing down here. We're trying to get this thing over here. So we're not there, right? And then you got to start thinking like, well, how the heck do I get a sine x plus 1 to become a cosine? Now, we can't turn sine into a cosine. What can I turn into a cosine? Sine to the second power, right? Sine squared. Cool. And I know I want to get to a cosine, so I'm probably going to multiply by the conjugate here. Is that okay with everybody? That's what we're going to do. We're going to multiply by the conjugate. Because, again, my reasoning is I've got a sine, and I want to change it to a sine squared so I can get it to be a cosine squared. Yeah?
Why can't you just multiply by sine of x?
So you could try that. But if you multiply by sine of x, and actually the conjugate's going to work out for another reason as well that I see already. But then we're going to get a sine squared plus a sine, which puts another sine up top there. And I don't want, like, I'm trying to get just cosine, right? All right. Also, if I multiply by the conjugate, what's the conjugate of sine x plus 1? Sine of x minus 1, right? However, let's do a little forward thinking. What do I want on the bottom?
1 minus sine.
1 minus sine. So rather than multiplying by sine of x minus 1, I'm going to multiply by 1 minus sine of x. Does that make sense? Because that's what I want on the bottom anyway. There isn't really much of a difference except for like a negative is what we lose. So I'm going to rewrite the top real quick. Is everyone okay with this idea? We were allowed to do that, right? Sine of x plus 1 is the same thing as 1 plus sine. Okay? And all I'm doing is a little bit of thinking in that I don't want to multiply by sine minus 1. I want to multiply by 1 minus sine. So I'm just rearranging a little bit. And now when I multiply the top by 1 minus sine, I've also got to multiply the bottom by 1 minus sine, right? And that's going to give me up top, conjugates multiply, just square both of them. 1 minus sine squared. And on the bottom, I'm not going to multiply that out. Okay? And the reason I'm not going to distribute that, even though I know like you've like ingrained to distribute things, you want to distribute, okay, is that I want 1 minus sine on the bottom all by itself, right? Do we have a 1 minus sine on the bottom already? We do. Hey, look at that. True? Okay? And look, let's also say this. Let's also say this. We're trying to get here. I know these seem complicated, but look, I have the 1 minus sine down there already, right? With me? That's there. What's down the bottom that I don't want still is a cosine. So that has to cancel out somehow, true? Right? So somehow up top, I've got to switch that into a cosine because I have to cancel that cosine. But not only do I have to switch it to a cosine because I want to cancel it, I want to end up with the cosine. So what's the top have to become? Cosine squared. All right? It has to. Now, it does. You can see that that's our Pythagorean identity right there. But if you didn't realize that, like, it has to become a cosine squared. There's no other way for me to get rid of that cosine and get a cosine on top. Like, mathematically, it just has to happen if this is a true identity. Okay? So even if you didn't know it, like, you could be like, cosine squared. And just drop it right in there. Now it's equal to it. That works out. Cool. And you got this 1 minus sine. And we got the cosine. And you can cross out one cosine from the top with a cosine on the bottom because it's all multiplication. And that's the answer. Okay?